Well, good afternoon. Now we will talk about the second emotional intelligence here in our model, that is called self-regulation. Self-regulation. Now, self-regulation, as we had seen in our introduction class, that it is our ability to control and manage our own emotions. So, in today's class, now we will talk about a little more detail of that, what exactly self-regulation is, how do we understand self-regulation, how do we conceptualize that, and how important role does self-regulation play in our life. So, all of these aspects of self-regulation we will talk about now here. So, write down firstly, before we start it, emotions always create an impulse in us. Emotions always create an impulse in us to act in a certain manner. Emotions create an impulse in us to act in a certain manner. Our ability to control this impulse is at the root of all self-regulation abilities. Is at the root of all self-regulation abilities. So that is how we can define, you can say, start our discussion of self-regulation. The idea here is that emotions always create an impulse in us. Impulse is a very important term in this concept here. What is the meaning of impulse? I hope that you must have studied impulse in your physics classes, school days. How did you define impulse in physics? Well, we define impulse in physics as a very strong force acting for a short period of time. This is how we define impulse, F into delta T, strong force acting for a short period of time. So, when, for example, when a batsman hits a ball, for example, then he creates an impulse because the contact between the bat and ball is very small, a fraction of seconds maybe, but the force is so strong that the ball can go beyond the boundary also. So, a small force acting for a short period of time, this is what we call the impulse. Here also meaning is exactly same. So, sorry, a strong force, not a strong force acting for a small period of time. Time is small, force is strong. Now, here also we have the same meaning as well, because emotions also, as we had seen in many classes earlier, emotions also create a strong force on us. But that force created by emotion is always short in duration. Emotions are short in duration by definition, as we had seen in our earlier class. So, this is what we have seen. So, a strong force. According to some research, the time period for an emotion is not more than, think of it, not more than 90 seconds. No emotion can exist for more than 90 seconds if it is not given a feedback, fuel. Emotion is like a fire, and it needs fuel to keep on burning. And well, if no fuel is given to it, then within perhaps 90 seconds, according to some research, it might get extinguished. But we often give feedback to it. If you remember in our earlier class, through our memory, through our activity, through our external perception or stimulus, etc. So by all these things, we often give many feedback to our emotions in a way. But if we do not give feedback, then maybe according to some estimate, 90 seconds is the time during which emotions may exist, and then after they will simply fade away. So That is how we can define, that is how we understand emotion. So how we control that impulse is at the center of every self-regulation abilities that we will talk about in today's class and tomorrow's class as well. So let us talk about self-control, impulse control a little now. Now the idea of the impulse control is that, now in order to understand impulse control and its implication, its importance for us, a very important research was conducted in around 1960s at Stanford University by a psychologist called Walter Mischel. Now Walter Mischel's experiment is perhaps one of the most famous experiment, most influential experiment in the history of psychology. This experiment has influenced very significantly on how do we understand the human nature, human performance, human success, failure, etc. So it's a very, very important experiment in the field of psychology. So important it is that I would like to talk a little more detail of that experiment. So let us talk about his experiment. How did this experiment help us to understand the self-control and the self-regulation abilities in a way. Now in psychology we call this experiment as the marshmallow test. So we call that as marshmallow test. So this is more recently, you can say almost 10-15 years ago, well, you can say Walter Mischel has written a book also with the same name, Marshmallow Test. So Marshmallow Test was the name of the experiment as well as the name of the book that he has written on that experiment, in which he has talked about that original experiment that he conducted in 1960s early, and for next 30 years how this experiment was followed up and how much influence this experiment had on our understanding of the human life, human nature. So this is what we'll do. So we'll briefly like to talk about marshmallow test here to help you understand the self-regulation as an emotional intelligence. Now, if you look at the marshmallow test, first of all, marshmallow test was done on small young children. All of these participants in that experiment were young 4-year-old children. 4-year-old children. And all these students who participated in that experiment, they were the students of the Stanford, a small nursery school within the campus of the Stanford University itself. The idea was that all these children should have some similar background. They were the children of the professors of Stanford University, the staff members, senior students of Stanford University, etc. So the idea was that all these children had a similar background in their family, in their surroundings. They were brought up in the Stanford University campus. So in every aspect, these children had similar conditions of life. Now what was done in that test? First of all, this test was done in a small room in the basement of that Binge Nursery school itself. In that school, what he did, Walter Mischel, it was a very completely empty room. Nothing was there in the room to distract the attention of the child. Completely empty, no window, no toy, no painting, no object to play with, everything, nothing was there. Everything was taken out. Only one chair was there on which the child was made to sit, and in front of the child a table was there, and suppose on that table there was a box. So on that table, suppose there was a box. Now this box has two divisions. In one part of the box, suppose there was one marshmallow was kept. Now what is a marshmallow, by the way? I hope all of you know marshmallow, you must have eaten it. It is a small candy, cloud shaped, you can say the cube shaped, cloudy type of thing, fluffy, you can say, the candy which children like a lot. So in one part of the box, a single marshmallow was put, and in the second part of the box, two marshmallows were put. And these children, one child at a time, of course, the child was given a choice, two choices. First of all, you can take one marshmallow anytime that you want, it is yours. Anytime you can decide, you can take, this is just in your region. And this box was closed, locked, and it has a glass cover so that the people can see that there is one marshmallow in this division and two marshmallow in the second division, second part. So children were given two choices. First of all, one, that you can take one marshmallow any time that you want, it is yours, it is up to you. But there was a better choice also, that suppose I am the experimenter, then I tell the child that, well, you can take one marshmallow any time that you want, it's yours, but there is a better choice. Better choice is that I am going out for some important work, and I will be back in around 15-20 minutes. If you can wait for 15-20 minutes, then I will give you 2 marshmallow. Choice is yours. You can decide any time how much what you want to take. Do you want to settle for a single marshmallow, or do you want to wait for 15-20 minutes for 2 marshmallow? Any time in between you can change your opinion. If you want to, if you think that okay, you are not going to wait now further and you will be you can say happy with 1 marshmallow, then there is a button in front of you. You can press the button and there will bell will ring outside. There is assistant sitting outside. He will come, open the box and give you 1 marshmallow. But always remember, there is a better choice. Better choice is that if you wait for 15-20 minutes, I will give you 2 marshmallow. Choice is yours. Saying that, the experimenter left the room and the child was left all alone. Well, in that chair in front of him there are 2 marshmallow. One was already in his reach. He could have taken it any time. Now looking at this marshmallow which he could take, well, it created a strong impulse in these children. We all have that strong impulse to eat a food that is tasty for us. So it created a strong impulse in the children, and because of that impulse, almost half of the children, well, they were not able to control their impulse. The moment experimenter left the room, within a few minutes, they were not able to control their impulse. They pressed the button and the experimenter's assistant came, and as promised, he gave him 1 marshmallow. But almost half of the children, they were somehow able to control themselves, 40% of them. They were somehow able to control their impulse and waited for 15-20 minutes for the sake of 2 marshmallow. Now, their behavior was very interesting to watch. Some of these children, they did move their hand to press the button. Impulse was there. Remember, impulse is a very important part of our life. So, impulse was there. So, they can see the impulse was there. It will be, can say, so they had that impulse. They moved their hand to press the button, but so they moved their hand to press the button, but just you can see when they were about to press the button, suddenly it occurred to their mind that it's just a question of 15-20 minutes. I will get 2 marshmallow. Thinking that, they moved their hand back, they did not press the button. Some of these children, well, in order to control themselves, they close their eyes so that they don't have to see the marshmallow. It was found in later follow-up research that if the object of your desire, like marshmallow in this case, if the object of your desire is farther from you, both in space and time, then impulses become weaker. And when it comes closer to you, you can say, or other that we will talk about later. It is object of desire. You can say, if you see the object of desire, then you can say impulse becomes stronger. If you don't see it, then impulses become weaker. These children knew that by intuition. So they covered their eyes so that they don't have to see the marshmallow. That would make it easier for them to control themselves. Some of these children pushed the box to the other corner of the table so that the box is far away from them. This was also found in a follow-up research that if the object of your desire is farther from us, both in space and time, then impulses become weaker. When they come closer to us, then impulses become stronger. These children knew that perhaps that intuitively, so they pushed the box to the other corner of the table so that it becomes far from them and it will become easier for them to control themselves. Some of these children, in order to distract themselves, they started counting their fingers. Some of them, for example, they started, you can say, scratching their nail. Some of them started, you can say, singing a song, saying a rhyme, telling a story to themselves that there was a deer in the jungle, it waited for something and got a better reward, some sort of self-motivation. So, somehow by doing all of these things, these children somehow were able to control themselves for 15-20 minutes. And after that, well, as promised, the experimenter came and gave them the 2 marshmallow. Now, this experiment was, so in this experiment, these children, for example, the children who went for a single marshmallow, they did not wait for 15-20 minutes, they were called impulsive children. And those children who waited for the 15-20 minutes in order to take 2 marshmallow, they were called resistors. They were called resistors. So they also had the impulse. Impulse is an important part of our life. They also had impulse, but they were somehow able to resist their impulse. Resistance was the important. Resisting was important thing. They were somehow able to resist. They were called resistors. They were called impulsive children. Now, before we proceed with this experiment further, well, let us take some day-to-day examples of impulse and impulse control. Impulse is, as we will see, is a very important part of our life. Every day in our life, we are subjected to many such impulsive forces on us. Very often, we act blindly on such forces, and that may sometimes create a big trouble for us also. So, think about some of these examples and tell me that how many of you, well, we can say act blindly under such impulsive situations and all. Think of it. Suppose, for example, you are watching this, you can say, lecture right now, class right now. Suddenly, there is a beep in your mobile, and there is a, you can see the message has come. How many of you will control yourself that I will see this message after the class is over, rather than just start looking at your mobile and the message there? Well, you will find that many students, when I see in a physical classroom in front of me, then many students are there who, well, when the message comes up, then most of the time these messages are so stupid. Many times messages that come to my mobile, most often they are just about some plot of land or loan offer, etc., that they are offering you without any guarantee, etc. So, we don't even read that message, we simply delete that, but when the message comes up, the impulse is so strong that you are just, well, let me see that message. I have seen many students sitting in the classroom and they start not only looking at the message, but responding that also and chatting also sitting in the classroom, oblivious of, well, there is a class going on. That would be an example of impulse. Another example of impulse which I often find very interesting is that when you drive on the roads. Suppose, for example, you are driving on the road. Suppose I am driving on the road. Suppose that there is a red light, and suppose this is the stop line. Suppose this is the stop line, and you can say, and suppose the light has turned red, and suppose cycle of that red light is say 90 seconds. Now, the moment light turns red, then you will see within a few seconds, suppose these are the four-wheelers standing there on the road. Front row is always taken by the bikers. They come like this and they just stand in front. Now, you will see that many of these bikers, this is my experience I am telling you, that many of these bikers initially they are quite relaxed when it is 90, and suppose the timer is going down, the 89, and then after 88 it goes down like this. 88 is going down. Now, initially you can see that these bikers will stand very quiet, calm, can say without any, well, restlessness and all. But the moment you can see that it becomes 10 seconds, suddenly you can see the change in their behavior. They will start their bike. They will take one step ahead, again start taking that accelerator, honking a number of times. It actually happened to me a few years ago that my car was standing here and in front of me there was a young biker was there like you people. And so he was on his bike here and the timer of the cycle of the red light was just 90 seconds like this. So initially he switched off his bike, that young man, and then after, well, he was quite relaxed on his bike again, just looking here and there, and the moment it became 10 seconds, suddenly he started his bike. And then after he took accelerator, one step ahead he went, then again he take accelerator, because stop, brake, one step ahead again a brake, and when it became 4 seconds, then he was not able to control his impulse and he jumped the red light. At the moment he jumped the red light, then on this corner a policeman was standing there, he stopped him. Now, when I was passing through near him again, of course after 4 seconds when the light turned green, and when I saw this young man talking to the policeman there, then I felt like asking him that, young man, tell me, what would you do by saving these 4 seconds of your life? Suppose, for example, if you reach your home 4 seconds earlier, then do you have some plan that you want to do this? How are you going to spend these 4 seconds? Is it a question of time that he is trying to save in this situation? No. Had it been a question of time, then he might have jumped the red light in the beginning itself. He waited for 86 seconds. That was easier for him, but last 4 seconds became difficult and he jumped the red light. So, it was not the question of time that he was trying to save, because he waited for 86 seconds already. It was not the question of time. It was actually the question of lack of impulse control. It was impulse, and that lack of impulse control might have cost him a few hundred rupees and 15-20 minutes. So, 4 seconds he was trying to save and 15-20 minutes perhaps he might have already spent there. Now that is so most of the people who jump the red light on road or people who overspeed on the road 90% of the case it is never the question of time. It is just the question of impulse, lack of impulse control. That impulses force us to jump a red light where we should have waited. It does not make a difference in terms of time. However you jump the red light, you will never be able to reach your home more than 4 or 5 minutes earlier. Maximum 4 or 5 minutes distance will be, well, time will be saved. Is that 5 minutes time that you can save, we can say, by jumping so many red lights and taking so much, is it worth taking so much of risk? Well, of course, no. Logically speaking, it is not worth it. But majority of the people jump the red light or over speed on the road and put themselves and others at risk in that manner. Well, just because of the impulse. It is the question of impulse control. So that is an interesting example of impulse control that you can see on the roads whenever you drive. Another interesting example that I find, which I have seen many of my students, including me also, well, suffer from that. It happens when you are in the kitchen. Suppose you are in the kitchen and you are trying to boil the milk. Now, when you are waiting for the milk to boil, you may have realized that when you are waiting for the milk to boil, then it will appear that it will never boil. Now, suppose you have a small work outside. For 2 seconds you go outside and come back, this milk has spilled over. Is it that milk is conspiring against you, that when you are waiting for it to boil, it will not boil, but the moment you leave the room, can say for 2 seconds, it will start boil, it will spill out? Of course not. Milk is taking its own time. So that restlessness that that you feel in such a situation, it was because of the impulse control. Because one of the very important thing about impulse and impulse control that we need to realize is that impulses always distorts the sense of impulses always distorts the sense of time in us. We all have a sense of time in our mind, a biological clock sort of thing. So we have a sense of time, and when we act on the basis of impulse, then that sense of time is often lost. So when you are acting against your impulse, then, well, when you are waiting for the red light to turn green, for example, then 4 seconds may appear like 4 minutes. When you are waiting for milk to boil, then 4 minutes may appear like 4 hours. So it always expands, distorts the sense of time that we have in our mind. That is one of the important, interesting characteristics of impulse. Another interesting example of impulse that I find, particularly in my classroom, the offline physical classroom, is the face of your friend. When you are in the classroom, then one interesting example that you will find also is the face of your friend. The moment you look at the face of your friend, you have a strong impulse to speak something, say something. That is the reason that in most of the classroom, many classroom at least, many students keep on talking to each other in the classroom. That often disturbs the classroom. When I ask them that please keep quiet, don't talk, whatever you are talking right now, you can wait for the class to be over, then we can talk. We have whole day. So just 3 hours we have in this classroom. But at that point of time when they feel like talking, then whatever they are feeling like talking, well, is so important for them, they must. In fact, rationally if you look at it, that whatever they are trying to talk is so insignificant that after some time, maybe after the classroom is over, they will not even remember what they were about to talk about. But at that point of time when they feel like talking, well, that becomes the most important thing, that they have to speak. Class can wait, sir can wait, but I have to speak if I have to. This is another interesting and important characteristics of impulse. Impulse always creates a false sense of impulse always creates a false sense of urgency inside us. So when we are acting on impulse, then whatever you are feeling like, you think, you feel like doing, it will appear to most urgent thing in the world. It is a false, but it is a very important sense of urgency that it creates. So when we are waiting for the red light to turn green, then you feel that it is urgent for you to jump the red light. When you are waiting for the milk to boil, it will appear very urgent for you that it must do, and you have something else to do after that. So it creates sense of when you feel like talking to your friends in the classroom, then, well, that thing otherwise which is very insignificant, but it will appear to you very urgent at that time. So that is where you can say urgency, sense of urgency often comes up. So impulse always creates a sense of urgency into our mind. That's why we often say that whenever you have to decide whether to do the urgent thing or important thing. What should you do first? We always say that do the important thing first, because this urgency, sense of urgency often comes out of impulse, which may be false most of the time. Realize whether it is important or not. If it is important, do it. If it is not, then forget it. So ignore the urgency, do the important thing first. This is what we often suggest. So that is what we can say is see. Another example of impulse, last. Another example of impulse that I personally find very interesting in my classroom, physical classroom, is the watch, clock. Do you realize, for example, if you are in a classroom, suppose, do you realize that your class started at say 2 o'clock and your class is supposed to end at 4 o'clock? Okay. So it is easier for a student in the classroom to sit for 2 hours, 3 hours. Normally we have 3 hours class here. Suppose your class is starting at 2 o'clock and it is supposed to end at 5 o'clock. Then do you realize that it is easy for you to sit in the classroom for 3 hours? But if I try to extend the classroom after 5 o'clock by 10 minutes, for example, then many students start finding restlessness. And I have seen in many classrooms that the moment it becomes 5 o'clock, for example, the class overtime, the moment it becomes 5 o'clock, many students simply close their notebook. And then after, along with that, they close their mind also. So it's over now. So that this sense is so strong that after that 5 minutes class becomes difficult for 3. Logically speaking, if you can sit in a classroom for 3 hours, then 5 minutes extra should not be a big deal. But it becomes very difficult for many students to manage that they start, class is disturbed because of that. Even if I am speaking, I am continuing with that again, trying to do some complete the topic, but my students start standing and well closing their mind and their notebook. Impulse is guilty of that, guilty in that. So if you look at, if you observe yourself in a day, then every day you will find that so many things happen to us that keep on creating impulses. And because of that impulse, well, we keep on doing many things that we otherwise should not have done. And that creates lots of problems. So I can give you homework. Starting from now till tomorrow, observe yourself. How many times did you act on impulse? And how many times did you control your impulse? Suppose, for example, you have this strong feeling to jump the red light and you did not. You had a strong feeling to take, you can say, accelerator and over speed and you did not. You have a strong impulse to leave your kitchen when the milk is boiling, but you did not. You have the strong impulse to say something to your friend in a classroom, but you did not. So think of it, how many times did you control your impulse? And that will be a very good exercise that you can possibly do in self-awareness here. So that is what you can say impulse control in a way is. So now coming back to that experiment that I was mentioning. Now this experiment, very simple experiment, that two types of children were identified, the impulsive and the resistors. Now, but this experiment was, well, one of the longest experiment in the history of psychology, because after this these children were categorized as impulsive and resistors, then they were tracked for the next 25 years, that how did they perform in the life later on. Was there any difference between the life that they lived after that? And it was found in that experiment that there was significant difference was found in the way they lived their life after that. What was the difference? Let us talk about some of this. Suppose, for example, this is impulsive child and that is resistor. It was found that these resistors, first of all, well, they have much better family and social standing. They have much better family and social standing. They had much better family and social standing. What does that mean? It meant that there are two types of children that you often find around yourself. That some children, I have seen, most of us are somewhere in between, but there are two extreme type of children are. It is so some children I have seen that even if they grow up, they become 18, 19, 20 years of age, nobody takes them very seriously. People often snub them. Whenever they say something, people often snub them, don't interfere into the elders' matter. So they are simply ignored, they are simply dismissed, they are simply snubbed. On the other hand, there are some children even at a younger age, maybe 12, 13 years of age maybe, if they say something, people often take notice of that. In the school also, in the family also. Now there are many other factors that determines that, how seriously people take it depends on family culture, school culture, many other factors determine that. But if we remove all these factors, then you will see impulse control may be a reason for that. How does impulse control determine how seriously people take you? Just think of it. There are some people like impulsive children. There are some people, they often speak on the basis of impulse. And if you speak often on the basis of impulse, then you will often speak nonsense. Because remember, impulsive things are often nonsensical thing. You just feel like saying and you simply say it. So if you speak only on the basis of impulse, then most often you will speak nonsense. On the other hand, they were the children, they often thought before speaking something. And since they thought before speaking, so often they spoke more sense. And if you speak more sense, people will take you more seriously. If you speak nonsense, people will start taking you not so seriously. So that is the difference between. So they are the children. There are some people like I, for example, they speak because they have to speak. They, on the other hand, they speak because they have something to speak about. That one addition of one word makes a big difference. So, so that one word makes a difference, it has something to speak about. So, if you speak only when you have something to speak about, then people will take you more seriously. But if you speak for the sake of speaking, for the heck of it, then people will start taking you lightly. That was one difference. Second difference was found was that these children, first of all, were able to make and maintain much better long-term relationship. They were able to make and maintain and nurture many long-term relationships in their life. Now, relationship is an important part of, you can see, the social life in a way. And impulse control has a role to play, that how strong relationship you are able to make and maintain. How many of you, for example, can say that the person who was your friend in your pre-primary school is a friend even today, with one qualification, that person has never lived in your, again say, since your pre-primary school, maybe has never lived in your neighborhood or in your surrounding. That person has left your city, but still you are able to maintain that connection. Today it is easier for you because you have social media that allow you to connect with the old friends also. But remember, in 1960s and 70s, when social media was almost, you can say, was even unimaginable. So only way to keep in touch with somebody who is far from you was through writing the letters. And writing letter requires a lots of impulse control. Writing it, posting it, waiting for the response, then after. So during this period, if you are able to control your impulse, then perhaps you will be able to maintain that. Otherwise, so they were the people, they had much better patience in that sense. They were able to control themselves much better during that period, and because of that, they had much long-term, satisfying, and you can say the profound and deep long-term relationship. They are not unsocial people. They are also very social people. But they also have relationships. But their relationships are something like out of sight and out of mind. Theirs, on the other hand, is, well, out of sight, then also not out of mind. So that is the nature of their relationship. That was what was found in them. Not only that, it was found that these children had much better academic performance in comparison to the impulsive children. In fact, it was found that these children, registers, had around 210, think of it, extra score in their SAT exam. they had around 210 extra score in their SAT exam. SAT exam, you know, SAT exam is more like a scholastic aptitude test, is more like you can see the college entrance exam in America. So any student who has to take admission in the college in America, they have to write a SAT exam. So it is a sort of universal exam every student has to write during for the college admission. So it is a standard exam. Guys. It is something like I think CUET in India nowadays that we have just started last year. So it was found that these children they had around 210 extra out of 1600. So out of 1600 they had 210 extra score in their SAT exam in comparison to the impulsive children. So for example, if they got around 400 score, then their score was found to be 610. That was the difference that was found in there you can say score. Now, the next question is how is it that SAT score or academic performance is influenced by the impulse control? Well, you can think of this. Suppose for example, right now I tell you that tomorrow there will be a test in your class. If there is a test tomorrow in the class, then what is the most logical thing that you should be doing in the evening today? Well, revising everything. Suppose you take all your previous notes out and start revising everything. Now, the moment you can say you are studying there, suddenly one of your friend comes to you and he tells you that there is a very good film has been released, let's go and watch that film. You initially tell your friend that no, I am not going with you. I have to prepare for the exam. You can say test is there tomorrow. I have to prepare for that. Your friend tells you forget about that. It's just you can say the normal test. You are not going to become an IAS officer tomorrow. So let's enjoy the film. You can write the test later on also. Now in this case, you will have, if you are an impulsive person, then that impulse to watch a film will force you to go with your friend to watch the film and enjoy. Your study will be disturbed. Or suppose for example, let's take another example. Suppose for example, this is time. And suppose in the morning you have set your routine that from 8 o'clock in the morning to say 10 o'clock in the morning you will read the newspapers, magazines, etc. Suppose for example at 9 o'clock one of your friend comes to you and he tells you that well let's go and have a cup of coffee. I have some gossip, I have some you can say gossiping news to give to you. Now, in this case, initially you might possibly tell your friend that no, I am reading the newspapers, I have to, well, complete this by 10 o'clock. Your friend tells you, forget about the newspaper, it's there with you all the day, you can read it later on, let's enjoy the time. Now, enjoy the coffee, let's enjoy the gossip. Now, in this case, if you, well, are an impulsive person, then you will go with your friend and your routine will be disturbed. You may read the newspaper later on, but that will be at the cost of something else. So the idea here is that every day so many things happen to us well which keep on creating impulse and very often we keep on acting on that impulse. And because of that you can see that well at the of course if you keep on doing that all the time then your study will be disturbed and at the end of it it will have a cumulative effect on your performance. That may be on the SAT exam. So it was found the difference between the two that these resistors were able to resist themselves these impulses whenever the situation was like that. Because of that there was a continuity in their study, they were used to focus more on their studies and that ultimately resulted into having a better performance. So that is what we can say the impulse control was. Not only that, it was found that these children, resistors, they had finally they got much better job and in the job also their performance was found to be much better than the impulsive children. So it was found that in every domain of life, it was found that these children, resistors, perform much better than the impulsive children overall. So that is the impact of impulse control marshmallow test that was found in that research. So write down a few lines if you have not written anything. Write down. It is found that the extent to which it is found that the extent to which a child at the extent to which a child at 4 years of age can control his impulse or her impulse. A child at 4 years of age can control his or her impulse to get one marshmallow, his impulse to get one marshmallow so that he can get two, so that he can get two 15-20 minutes later, so that he can get two 15-20 minutes later can be one of the most important, can be one of the most important predictor of, can be one of the most important predictor of his or her later success in, later success in almost every domain, later success in almost every domain of his life. In almost every domain of his life, in bracket, personal, social, academic or professional. Personal, social, academic or professional, bracket close, comma, much more than even, much more than even his or her IQ. Much more than even his or her IQ. So this is what was found in that the extent to which a child can control at 4 years of age, can control his impulse to get one marshmallow so that he can get two marshmallow 20 minutes later can actually help us to predict how successful this child is going to be in almost every domain of his life: personal, social, you can say academic, and these are 4 domains of life. So in every domain of life, how successful the child would be perhaps can be, we can understand that, we can predict that on the basis of a simple marshmallow test. This is what was found by people like Walter Mischel there. Now before you proceed further, let me see if there is a question, I think. Is it possible that impulsive people can convert into resistors or vice versa? Yes, perfectly possible. As I told you in the introduction class itself, emotional intelligence are learned. So they can be unlearned also, relearned also. So it is possible that anybody, so a resistor can also become impulsive and impulsive can also become resistor on many aspects. It is a learned thing. We learn it. Though there may be some temperamental difference may be there. But beyond a small difference in temperament, well, to a great extent it is a learned phenomena according to many of our research. Now, not only these 4 things in a way, but many other aspects of human life, it was found, was affected by impulsivity. Let's take a few more example, consequence of that result, that we can say that experiment. I am talking about resistors. It was found that resistors were able to show much better health, or they had spent much lower medical bill. Resistors had much lower medical bill in the next 25 years in comparison to the impulsive children. Now, how is the medical bill is affected by the impulsivity and all? Think of it, some correlation you can think. Suppose for example, you are, suppose you have some problem, some fever for example, you go to a doctor, doctor gives you a medicine and tells you that take this medicine for 5 days. And suppose after 3 days your fever is down, you start feeling normal. After that, how many of you continue taking that medicine till 5 days or stop taking it? Well, a large number of us simply stop taking medicine. We start thinking, well, I'm normal now, why should I take this medicine? So we stop taking that medicine. But if the doctor has given you that medicine for 5 days, then there may be a reason for that. Because if you stop taking medicine, after 3 days, the external symptom of your disease may be over, but internal infection might be there. So if you stop taking medicine after 3 days, then some internal infection might still remain that will make you more vulnerable to the next, can say, spread of the disease. You will be the first one to catch the disease again, go to the doctor, pay his fees again, buy more medicine, spend more money on the medical bill. So there are some that will impulsivity again. So there are some people, impulsive children, well, the people, they take medicine on impulse and they stop medicine also on impulse. And there are some people, resistors, they strictly follow their medical regime. And because of that, well, their immunity is normally higher, they fall sick less, ill less, they spend less money, they go less to the doctors, and well, ultimately they spend less money on the medical bill. Impulsive people, on the other hand, they are lower immunity, that makes them more vulnerable to the disease, and that is ultimately a problematic thing. Not only that, it was found that impulsive children had much better saving behavior. Much better saving behavior in comparison to the resistors. Now, question is that how is a saving behavior is influenced by the impulsivity? Well, you can think of some correlation. Because you know that it is often seen, you must have seen that suppose when you have money in your pocket and if you go into the market, then every shop invites you. It appears to you that they are open only for you. Now, many people are there, they are so impulsive that when they see something in the market, that they have a strong impulse to buy it and they ultimately buy it even if it is not required. I know there are many people, I have seen some people, they buy a cloth which they know that they are not going to wear it for the next 6 months. There is no occasion for that. But even then, when they see in the market, then they have such a strong, if it is in the market, it must be in my home. They buy it, bring it to the home, and then after they never wear it. During COVID time, I have seen many people have done many thing online in online shopping, which they are never going to use. They don't even open the packet. But when they see that on the Imagine or Facebook page, etc., they have a strong urge to buy it and they simply end up buying it. That is the thing. So if you keep on spending on money on the basis of impulse, then ultimately you will end up spending more, your saving will be affected. So that is what was found about. So impulsive people are more likely to spend, you can say, unnecessary things on unnecessary thing. Resistors, on the other hand, they spend only when it is necessary for them, it is required, and because of that they are able to save more money. Saving behavior is found to be also affected by the impulsivity. One interesting consequence was that impulsivity was found to be somehow associated with the obesity also. Though you know obesity has many causes, you can say genetic factors, hormonal factors, other biological factors, cultural factors, family background, all these things somehow you can say influence the obesity. But if you remove all the other factors, then one very important factor that influence obesity is the impulsivity. Now, how obesity is affected by impulsivity? Think of it. Suppose you go to the market and you see that can say beautiful picture of pizza and burger being displayed on the billboards and all. Now looking at that, or suppose for example you see that fresh samosa being fried on the side of the road. Now that smell of these things again will create a strong impulse, and these samosa wala often use that as a can say temptation, as a strategy also. They fry their samosa on the side of the road rather than inside the shop, because if they fry that on the side of the road, then smell will keep on spreading the whole on the road, and all the impulsive people will drawn inside and they will eat it. So that is what was found by these people further. So if you are an impulsive person, then you will end up eating more unhealthy food, more in quantity and more unhealthy. And if you are a resistor, then perhaps you will resist that, okay, I feel like eating, but perhaps I will not, it's not good for my health. So that, and one interesting thing, normally we have strong impulse often to eat unhealthy food. We do not have the impulse to eat the Sometimes you can see, because we don't have the impulse to eat the healthy food, like we don't have the impulse to eat the, you can say, the cabbage, for example, or cauliflower, for example, or spinach, for example, or you can say the broccoli, for example. We don't have the impulse to eat that. We have impulse only to eat the unhealthy food. My daughter often says that, well, chocolates are the God's apology for broccoli. God made broccoli, so as an apology, he had to make the chocolate. So we don't have, you can say, the impulse to eat the broccoli. We have the impulse to eat the chocolate, the ice cream, pizza, burger, and you can say those unhealthy food. Because these unhealthy food are packaged in such a manner that it often creates stronger impulse. And evolution has also prepared us to seek, well, unhealthy food, calorie-rich food. Because in the past, you can see during evolutionary period, we needed lots and lots of energy. Today, we don't need that energy because our lifestyle has become much more sedentary today. But earlier, our lifestyle was very active, we needed lots of energy. We used to consume lots of energy and we used to spend that. Today, that tendency to consume calorie-rich food is there, but we are not willing to, we are not able to spend that. That leads to the obesity. So, impulsivity is found to be somehow affected by obesity also. Or rather, obesity is found to be affected by impulsivity also somehow. Let's take one question is there, Pinto. So sometimes an impulsive person changes into rational one and vice versa, depend on the situation. So which person will get more success in life? Who in a combination of both one and only one of the above? As in some circumstances, both has significant role individually. Pinto, first of all, nobody is 100% resistor and 100% impulsive. We all are a combination only. We all have impulse. Sometimes we are able to control, resist that, sometimes we are not. More you are able to resist that, well, better will be your, you can say, chance of success maybe. So it's not categorical thing that, okay, some people are 100% resistors like R and 100% impulsive. They are ideal types. Reality is that we all are a combination of both of that. Impulse is a very important part of our life. If impulses are not there in us, then you will never be a human being. You will become a computer, in that case, robot. So impulses are very important. Don't try to consider that impulses are always bad. But impulses are something that has to be resisted, that has to be controlled. Rationally, you have to think, okay, is this impulse necessary for me to act or not? And if not, resist that. If yes, allow that. That is what we suggest here. So that is how we understand impulsivity and the resistivity. Now, what we call for the same concept, we have many other name also here. Suppose, for example, this is the impulsive person and this is the resistor. Now, we often call that, we often use one important, you can see, the trait that is called impulse control. I have been using that. So, these people are high in impulse control and these people are low in impulse control. We also call this impulsivity as the people who are high in impulse control, they are low in impulse control and they are high in impulse control. So people who are low in impulse control, they are also called sometimes, they are the people who often go for immediate gratification of they often go for what we call the immediate gratification of impulse. Immediate gratification of impulse. So when they have an impulse, then they have a strong urge to immediately, I want it now. I want it now. I want it here. So immediate gratification of the impulse. There are some people, they are, for example, they are the ones, they are good in what we call delay of gratification. They are good in what we call the delay of gratification. Delaying gratification is a very important part of our life. They also gratify, gratification is very important. That's why I told you impulses are not bad. We have to gratify our impulse, but they are the people, they are able to delay their gratification, that I will delay my gratification in order to get something more. So they are more greedy people in that case. They want more in their life and that ultimately allows them to control their impulse. So idea is that the success in life depends on how much sacrifice you are willing to make in the present so that you can get bigger things tomorrow in the future. So those children who were able to control themselves for 20 minutes, they sacrificed one marshmallow now so that they can get two marshmallow 20 minutes later. Success in life is all about that. Are you willing to sacrifice smaller things today, one marshmallow, so that you can get something bigger tomorrow, two marshmallow? Something, this is what determines your success. So today all of you might be making many sacrifices in your life, that instead of attending the classroom, well, you might have gone out and enjoy the life, weather is beautiful outside. Go enjoy, watch a film, walk around with the friends, do gossip. So you could have enjoyed that also. But you are sacrificing a lots of things there. And study hard. Tomorrow you can clear the UPSC exam, you can become an IAS officer. Now, to what extent you are capable of becoming an IAS officer tomorrow will depend on how much sacrifice you are willing to make today. Life is all about that, success is all about that, making sacrifice in the present so that you can get something better in the future. That is what we call delay of gratification. So resistors are basically good in delaying gratification. They are able to push their gratification away so that they can get something better tomorrow. We also call this ability to delay the gratification as willpower. So impulse control is a measure of the willpower. So you can see that this second group of children, resistors, they had much stronger willpower. That I do feel like eating one marshmallow right now, but I will wait for 20 minutes for the second marshmallow. This will, how strong is your will? That I will wait, I will do the, can sacrifice this so that I have to get something, I want something better tomorrow. So it is a measure of your willpower, and willpower is a necessary thing to succeed in life. Without willpower, nobody can ever succeed in his or her life. Impulse control is a measure of that willpower. How much willpower you have, how much power is there in your will. I will do this, or I will wait for something better. I will make this sacrifice. So that is what we call the willpower. So all of these are the, you can say, the related term that you can use anytime. The impulsive resistivity, high impulse control, delay of gratification, and willpower. Impulsivity, low impulse control, immediate gratification, and lack of willpower. So that is what we can see. That is how self-regulation is conceptualized. Now, next important question is that we will discuss in some detail further, that how is it that this impulse control is related to ethics? Let's briefly talk about that also. So, change the paragraph and then after write further. Impulse control and ethics. Impulse control and ethics. Write down a few lines firstly. In order to take ethical decision, or in order to take ethical decision or to act on the basis of our values, we must be able to control our impulse created by some external temptation. So this is the next important thing that we have to understand. The idea here is that suppose, what is the meaning of the term ethical decision or ethical actions? Suppose, for example, this is your action. This is how we define ethical action. When our action is guided by our own value, then we say that such action is an ethical action. So that is how we define the ethical action. Values guiding, we have seen in the previous class in the morning today. So when your values guides your action, then that decision will be an ethical decision. But the problem in the life is that that our actions are not always guided only by the values. Our actions are often pressurized by forced upon by the some external temptations. Some external temptation which also create an impulse in us. So there is a, you can say, fight in our mind between impulse and the value, and in that fight very often for many people impulses win. So, and because impulses are much stronger in intensity, as we have seen in the definition class, its topic itself, that impulses are strong, they are short in duration, but they are strong in intensity. Values are long in duration, but they are short, you can say small in intensity, less in intensity. They are weaker but long term, stronger but short term, immediate. So, in short term, immediately you can see that impulses often override and the values, and if you act on the basis of impulse, then your value will often be overridden. So in order to act on the basis of our values, well, you must be able to control that impulse, then only you can listen to and act on your values. So that is the thing that we need to understand or remember. Now this external temptation that I am talking about, it can be anything. It can be as simple as a single marshmallow in front of you. Remember those children, for example, well, they had one marshmallow right now, they were temptation, and they were value 2 marshmallow 20 minutes later. So value was 2. Of course, we value 2 marshmallow more than 1. So they valued 2 marshmallow more, but temptation was so strong, temptation of 1 marshmallow was so strong that they went for that, and then they had to sacrifice their values. So this temptation can be as simple as 1 marshmallow in front of you. And this temptation can be as important as that. Suppose for example, you are an IAS officer and somebody comes to you and puts a briefcase on your table and tells you that, well, this briefcase is yours, 10 lakh rupees are there inside it, please sign on this form document. Now in this case there will be a fight with you. So you have a strong impulse. Who does not want 10 lakh rupees suddenly? So that 10 lakh rupees in front of you, that offer of a bribe will create an impulse in you. And on the other hand, your value system as civil service tells you that you should not accept any bribe. Now in this case, if you are an impulsive person, then chances are high that you might accept that money and your value will be compromised. So most often it is been found that the corrupt people are often more impulsive. So corruption requires impulse and honesty requires impulse control, because very often you will be put under the situation as a civil servant where so many temptations will be there. In order to be impulse, you can say honest, you have to control all those impulses. So those people who are able to control their impulse, they are able to act on the basis of their values, they remain ethical. Otherwise people go with the impulse and they often compromise. They have to often compromise on the value system that they stand for. That is what our research has found. In fact, majority of the moral question that we can see, problems that people often face, is often because of a lack of impulse control. In fact, the problem of the human race started because of a lack of impulse control. The first problem, first sin, the original sin was a problem of impulse control. What was that original sin? That original sin was that the Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, so paradise. So Adam and Eve, all of you must have heard the story of Adam and Eve. So Adam and Eve, when they were in the Garden of Eden, they were asked to do they could do anything that they wanted, with only one restriction was there, that they did not have to eat the fruit of the, you can say, fruit of the tree of knowledge. Only one restriction was there, but Adam was tempted that eat it, and he could not able to control that impulse. Because of that, he ate the apple, and because of that, they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. So, and we are paying the price of that. So, price. So that was original sin, and we all suffer because of that original sin, if you believe in that mythology. So, had Adam controlled his impulse on that day, then, well, we all might have been in the Garden of Eden even today. We would not have to prepare for the UPSC exam and all those things. Life would have been paradise. So he was not able to control his impulse. You know, somebody told me 3 apples changed the world. One was Adam's apple, second was Newton's apple, and third was Steve Jobs' apple. No, Adam's apple was bad because it created a lots of problem. Second and third was good. It made us better. So impulse control was a reason for that also. If you look at Indian mythology, then we might possibly say on this in this sense that the you can say the Mahabharata war was actually rooted into a lack of impulse control. Whole of Mahabharata war. Think of it. That root of Mahabharata war was shown in that you can say the play of dice. Now, when Yudhishthira was tempted with a dice, then well he can say he was impulsive can say dice player, gambler in that sense. Duryodhana was better in that case because he knew that he cannot play the dice. So he asked his uncle Shakuni to play on his behalf. Yudhishthir also could have done the same. He could have also asked Krishna to play on his behalf, who was a great dice player, great gambler. So he could have asked him to play the dice on his behalf, but he did not do that, he did it himself. So he did it himself, and then ultimately he kept on losing everything, and ultimately you know what happened. So had Yudhishthir controlled himself that time again from the we can say enticement of playing the dice, then perhaps Mahabharata war would have been prevented. So many problem in mythological study and otherwise also you see it is often the result of the lack of impulse control. So impulse control plays a very important role in our success and failure in the moral life, etc., etc. So important impulse control is in all these sense, we can appreciate that sense now that people often call, these people often say, these researchers, Walter Mischel or Daniel Goleman, etc., they call impulse control as the master aptitude. They call the impulse control as the master aptitude. What is the meaning of the term master aptitude? Master aptitude means that impulse control is the master of all other aptitude that people have. It is in this sense that suppose for example there is a person who has everything with him, a very high IQ, good education, good family, resource, background, everything is there. But he does not have the impulse control. He might fail miserably in his life. Second person on the other hand, suppose he also have the same good things in him, good IQ, good education, good family background, resource, culture, etc. But he has impulse control as well. He will be a successful person. So impulse control makes other aptitude for us to work. I often like to compare impulse control with electricity in this room. If you look at this room here, electricity cannot do anything to you, but it makes everything else work for you. Suppose in this room, for example, where light is there, AC is there, board is there, mic is there, camera is there, everything is there, but nothing will work if you switch the electricity off. And everything will start working if you switch it on. Impulse control is like that. So if you have impulse control, everything will work for you. And if you do not have the impulse control, then nothing will work for you. The idea further is that nature has given us many aptitude, but all the aptitude that we have is locked. And what is the master key? Master key is the impulse control. So impulse control is that key that opens all the possibilities, all the doors of possibilities for us. In this sense, it is called master aptitude, master of all other aptitude that people have. Without this, other aptitudes are well locked. They are useless, they are unusable. That important role does impulse control play in our life. So that is how we understand, that is how we conceptualize the impulse control here. Now before you proceed, let me take a few questions. There is a question. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Shubham, sir, what if there is a situation, either a briefcase of 10 lakh or a gunpoint? Should we choose the gunpoint so that our values remain protected? Shubham, at least in ethics class, we will say yes, that should be done. But in practice, you can say practical life, you can decide it yourself. As existential philosophy says, it's you to decide and you can take the responsibility for that. So if there is a gunpoint, then well, we can find a third way out, maybe try to find a third way out. What can possibly be there? Why do you think that life only gives you two choices? There may be a third way out. Try to do that. Nobody will put a gun in your hand and ask you to take that 10 lakh rupees. So that is a little hypothetical. Now, before we end this topic, let's talk about before we end this topic, let's talk about one more thing. If you look at, you can say, biology, the biochemistry of, you can say, impulse control, then you will see that whenever we find ourselves in a stressful situation. Remember, impulse control is a stressful situation. It creates stress on us in a way. So those children who were waiting for 20 minutes to take 2 marshmallow, they were undergoing a lots of stress. So whenever we are in a stressful situation, then our body releases two sets of hormone. One is most common, well known for of one is the cortisol. I hope that you may have heard the name of cortisol. We call cortisol as a stress hormone. We call cortisol as a stress hormone. It is responsible for creating stress in us. So stress in us. So whenever suppose you are feeling a strong stress, for example, well, a strong anger, fear, nervousness, panic, etc., and if your blood is tested, it may you may find that higher level of cortisol will be there. Reverse is also true, that if a small amount of cortisol is injected in you, then suddenly you will start feeling the symptoms of stress, the higher heartbeat, palpitation, etc. So it is a stress hormone. It creates stress in us. It is related to the stress. On the other hand, at the same time, a second set of hormone is also released in our body. That is most important one of them is adrenaline. There are others also, but the most important one is adrenaline. Now, adrenaline is a hormone that creates the positive stress inside it, creates sense of challenge, for example, in us, thrill, excitement, etc. These are the things that is normally created by the adrenaline. Now, both of these two hormones increase our, you can say, energy level. If you look at that diagram that we have been making here, suppose for example, this is the circle of emotion, and suppose for example, so both of them, cortisol and adrenaline, increase the energy level of your body, arousal, but adrenaline does that in the positive direction and cortisol does the same in the negative direction. So adrenaline creates what we sometimes call as positive stress. It creates positive stress, adrenaline, so sense of challenge, thrill and excitement, and cortisol increases a negative stress, like you can see the fear, nervousness, panic, etc. Just imagine a situation. Suppose for example, there is a young man. Suppose you are riding a bike. Those of you who have, you can say, who have the hobby of riding the bike, for example. Suppose you are riding a bike, and suppose you are riding at a dangerously in some free road, for example, like in near Delhi, we have Yamuna Expressway, where you can see the road is very good, no traffic, not much traffic, and no traffic red light. So free traffic, free flow of the traffic and all. Now suppose in that situation, suppose you are riding a bike at a very high speed, say 110 kilometers per hour, 120 kilometers per hour, dangerously high speed. Now suppose one of your friend is pillion riding behind you. Then can you tell me what will be your emotion and what will be your friend's emotion? Well, I hope that you can realize that your emotion you will be thrilled and excited, challenged, and your friend on the other hand will be panicky. So what happens? Both of you are in the same situation, dangerously high, I can say the risk situation. But you are feeling thrill and excitement, and your friend is experiencing, well, fear and panic, nervousness and panic. So in such a situation, you can see that if your blood will be checked again, then you will find high level of adrenaline there, and your friend on the other hand will have a comparatively much higher level of cortisol. So that is what you can say these two. Now, what is the difference between these two conditions? Why is it that in same situation you have, you can say, a challenge, a thrill, and your friend has, well, the panic or nervousness? Key word here is control. That if in this situation you are in control of the situation. So the idea is that whenever we perceive that we are in control of the situation, then, well, the adrenaline level often becomes higher. And when we think that we are in no control, we are going to suffer irreparably without any, you can say, chance of recovery maybe, then, well, the cortisol level often becomes high. So This is how we can say the two people differ from each other. People who are high in self-control and people who are low in self-control. So both of these two things. So what is the difference between them? People who are high in self-control often think in terms of control. They, on the other hand, they do not think much in terms of control. They think, for example, that my life is in my control. I can do something in order to change the outcomes of my life. So I am in control situation. They, on the other hand, think that I can't do much. I can't do anything in order to control and can say manipulate the situation. They, on the one hand, people who are high in impulse control, well, they often, the moment they have a problematic situation, a stressful situation, they often go into a what we call sometimes as planning mode. They, on the other hand, do not go into that planning mode. Their mind goes in planning, okay, what I can do in order to handle the situation that is creating stress from. Think of those children who were able to wait for 15-20 minutes. Well, they often had a plan in their mind ready. What were the plans? Closing your eyes, pushing the box to the other side, counting your finger, singing a song. All of these were the plans. That if, oh, I can do this thing in order to handle this situation. I am under stress, but I can handle it by doing these things. So there has to be some plans ready in our mind. That is what, well, this does. They, on the other hand, they do not have any such planning in their mind. They often have high self-control people. They often are solution oriented. When they have a problem, they start thinking about solution, what can be done in order to handle the situation. They are more problem focused. They keep on cribbing about life is so bad, life is so problematic, what can I do? So they keep on cribbing about the problem and they think or imagine the solution. And finally, you can see they are the people who are more future oriented. They always keep on cribbing about only the present. So future oriented. So people who are high in self control, they often think about the future that, well, present may be bad, but future might be better. So that I am going through a bad phase right now, but future might possibly be become. So if your mind is on the future, then it becomes easier for us to control ourselves in the present. So those children who thought about two marshmallow that will come to them 20 minutes later, they were easier, it was easier for them to control their impulse for one marshmallow. If you think more about what will be life after you become an IAS officer tomorrow, it will become easier for you to control yourself today in order to while making certain sacrifices. So think about the future which will be brighter if you make some amend in the present. So this is the way a thought pattern is there. Because if you look at it, human beings are just like a chemical machine. That our behavior is often determined just by these hormones like adrenaline, cortisol, or neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, endorphin, oxytocin, etc., etc. But we are a special thing because we have a special part in our brain called prefrontal cortex that can control self-regulating mechanism. By controlling our thought process in this manner, we can actually, well, control our biochemistry also, which will ultimately have an impact on our many aspects of emotional intelligence. So this is what self-control actually depends on. Sir, how I control my anger? Let us see if we can do something or not. So that is how self-regulation is conceptualized by us here. Now next important thing that we would like to talk about is, change the paragraph and then after write further. On the basis of self-regulation, the following competences have been identified. The following competences identified. First one is, write down, self-control. First one is self-control. Now write down firstly a few lines. It is our ability to self-control. It is our ability to keep our destructive emotions is our ability to keep our destructive emotions and impulses in check. Destructive emotions and impulses in check. The people who are high in this competence number one, they manage their distressing emotions and impulses and impulsive feelings well. Well. So, this is how we can see that we can simply define self-control first of all. So, idea of the self-control is that if you look at technically speaking, self-control should be about any emotion, because if you look at further again this circle of emotion that we have been talking about, then the self-control is even about the positive emotions, because we have seen, we know that even strong positive emotions also influence our performance badly. So when we are very happy or excited, then also our performance becomes bad. But the positive emotions are easier to control, but more difficult are to control the emotions like this one, high arousal and negative, and like extreme anger, nervousness, panic, etc. They are more difficult emotions to control, or very low arousal negative emotions like extreme sadness, bordering depression. They are more difficult to control. So these emotions are called, we can say, destructive emotions, distressing emotions, or sometimes distressing, you can say disruptive emotions. Disruptive emotion, so they distract our life, they create distress in us, they disrupt our performance much more strongly. Because of that, practically speaking, self-control is about your ability to control these emotions. How well you control your destructive emotion or distressing emotion, that is something that defines self-control as an emotional competence. First one. Second one, write down further. To an extent, self-control is an invisible competence. To an extent, self-control is an invisible competence. Now, that is one thing that we have identified, that we have found in the self-control. The idea of the invisible competence is that, suppose for example, think of it, suppose there are two people, say A and B. Suppose A is very high in self-control and B is very low in self-control. Now, suppose for example, at one point of time, A is suffering, this person is suffering for feeling a strong emotion and he is in control of that. Then for a third person like C, for example, he will appear to have no emotion at all. Of course, he is in complete control of that. So he will not appear to have any emotion at all. This person, on the other hand, he does not have any emotion. There is no question of control. From outside also, he will not appear to have any emotion at all. So for a third person, both of them will appear to be same. But for a third person, both of them will appear to have emotion. So for a third person, both of them will appear to be same. But for a third person, both of them will appear to have emotion. So for a third person, both of them will appear to be same. But for a third person, both of them will appear to have emotion. So for a third person, both of them will appear to be same. no emotion at all, but there is a big difference inside them, that he has a strong emotion which he is in control of, and he has no emotion, there is no question of control. So, in this sense, we often say that it is an invisible competence. From outside, it is difficult for us to say that, well, how much you can say this person is in self-control or not. So, that might be the thing. So that's why you can say these people who are high in impulse control are often accused by others that they don't have an emotion at all, because they are always in control of themselves. They do not show any signs of emotional disturbance or emotional arousal. So they are often accused that they do not have any emotion at all. But that does not mean that they do not have. Can you tell me, there is one person in our political life for the last 30 years maybe, well, who can be a very good example of such a person who never appears to have any emotion at all? I hope all of you may have figured him out. He is Dr. Manmohan Singh. So Dr. Manmohan Singh, if you look at him, for example, then hardly ever he will show you any sign of emotional disturbance. Well, when he speaks, then his voice is completely flat, no ups and downs and all. The face is always poker face, plain or without any emotional turbulence. Body language is always calm and composed. When he moves also, for example, then he moves more like as a flat rather than ups and downs type of thing, almost like a robot in a way. So always quiet, calm, composed, rational. Compare that with the Narendra Modi on the other hand. Always animated, that's very animated facial expression, hand movement big and all, voice again big ups and downs. So he always appears to have lots of emotional expression. Dr. Manmohan Singh never shows any sign of emotional distress. That does not mean that he does not have any emotion at all. He does have emotion and he does express his emotion in a more rational manner. So many of his statements does appear to be highly emotional statement. For example, when he was accused of many such accusations towards the end of his prime ministership, then he had said that, well, history will be much more generous to me than the present. You can see the media. Now this was very emotional statement. He was so disturbed by the false, you can say, the relentless accusation that was leveled against him. So that was the case. But well, he did not express that very angrily or something. Always calm and calm. Perhaps history will be more generous to me than the present. That was an emotional statement, but more rational expression of that. So such people are always like that again. It is very invisible competence. Now the next important question is that if it is so invisible, then how do you know that self-control, a person has high self-control or not? So that is one small thing that I would like to talk about. Write down further, change the paragraph and then after write further. But the most visible sign of self-control, but the most visible sign of self-control is in the ability of a person But the most visible sign of self-control is in the ability of the person to manage his or her time. Is in the ability of the person to manage his or her time. They are very good in time management. So time management is found to be a very important sign of self-control for such a person. Because if you look at time management, then time management is a major problem that we all often suffer from. How many of you, for example, during your childhood, you made a routine for yourself that you will get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, brush your teeth at 6:10, take your breakfast at 6:18, start studying at 6:32, something like this? You must have made such a routine for yourself. That is not the question. More important question is that how long did you follow them? So, well, that is very good. Very often you can see that every child makes a routine like this. They follow it for 1 day, 2 day, 5 day, maybe very good in that. Well, and then after their life goes back to the impulsive lifestyle. After a few months, somebody comes to our home, some big person, some guru, some grandfather, uncle, some senior person, respectable person. Now they motivate us, pump us that yes, what are you doing? You are young people, you are wasting your time like this, so manage your time well. Now you are pumped up. Well, now the life will change from this moment. You make a routine of yourself, put that routine in front of your table. and you follow it 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, and then after again you go back to your lifestyle. So why it is so difficult for a human being to manage his time? Well, it is basically because of the impulse. Just think of same example that you took earlier. Let's suppose, for example, this is your time and your routine is that in the morning 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock you will read the newspapers, etc. And at 9 o'clock that friend comes to you. That special friend, we all have that friend in our life. He comes to you and he tells you, let's go and have a cup of coffee or something. Now, because of the impulse, you might go with the coffee and your routine will be disturbed. So every day, so many things happen to us that we ultimately keep on acting on the basis of impulse, and well, our routine is disturbed. But time management is a very important part of a successful life. If you look at anybody in the world who has been successful, anybody who has been extremely successful in the life, again, whoever that person, whatever field that person succeeds in, the most successful politician, most successful bureaucrat, most successful scientist, most successful entrepreneur, most successful manager, most successful terrorist. Well, terrorists are also successful or not. Success has nothing to do with the morality. So Osama bin Laden can be considered to be a successful terrorist because he was able to successfully blow up the World Trade Center. So most successful terrorist, most successful criminal, whoever you can talk about, you'll see that they will have all other qualities different in them. But one thing common will be there in all of them, that they all would be good in time management. That is a common thing you can find in every successful person. Time management is one of the most important thing, that only through that we can able to accomplish something that is important for us. So that is what we can see thing. So think of it, if the prime minister of the country, for example, he also have the same 24 hours in his day, but during the same 20, it's not that his days are longer, but in the same 24 hours he is able to do so much. We on the other hand, we also have the same 24 hours and we are also busy all the time, but we are often busy without work. If you evaluate your day in, like I said before, you're sleeping, that journaling that I talked about earlier in today's class, then that how much work has been done, then it will appear to you that you are busy all the day, but most productive work will not be that much. Why is that we get a sense of remaining busy all the time? Impulse that. Remember, impulse creates a false sense of urgency. If you act on the basis of impulse, then it will appear to you that you are always doing urgent work. That gives you sense of remaining busy, but important work will never be done. So impulse often creates a problem for us. Because of that, we keep on busy all the time, but actual work, productive work is very, very less often. So that is where the problem of impulse and impulse control comes up. So such people, so there are some people, you know, who are always in hurry, always keep on running from here to there. Always, you can say, in a hurry, always in, you can say, running and all. They always have this feeling that I don't have the time, I don't have the time. If you are like that person, then you should stop and think. Remember, time is never a problem, impulse is a problem. So if you are always in hurry, then impulse control may be one thing that you have to reevaluate about yourself. Because there are some other people, on the other hand, who are always quiet, calm, composed, and all of their work is done on time. They never have this feeling of being late always. So if you have this feeling of being late always, it is not the question of time that you have a problem for. You have actually a problem of impulse control. So impulse control gives us this feeling of always being late. So let me see a question. Where is that? There is a question. So to be punctual, there is a big hurdle, that is laziness. And if laziness can be overcome, then becoming punctual is easy. Sir, please explain how to overcome laziness. Impulse control. Laziness is an impulse control problem. So in that case again, so impulse is a big problem in that case, that we feel like, okay, taking rest rather than, well, planning our time. So plan the time, that is well. But we'll talk about that a little more later on. So that is how impulse control is often understood. So that is how you can say this is the time management about that. Next one. Third, that was second point. Third point, write down. Let me take this question before we go to the next one. Sir, if one individual, let's say A, is doing something and according to him it has right value, but according to another person, let's say B, so can we say that the concept of value is relative and there is a reference point to decide whether the value is right or not? Yes, Joy Subra. Yes, Joy Subra, each person has different value. That's why I told you money, the example that I gave you, that money can be a value. For a person like Mukesh Ambani, there is nothing wrong in that. So for a Mukesh Ambani to have money as a value is right, but for you as a civil servant, it will not be right. So in this sense that we are talking about here, values are relative. So as a teacher, I must have different value, and as a civil servant, you must have a different value. So values are in this case completely relative. There are some universal values like dignity and human rights, etc. But beyond that, our values are individual. Each person has his own value. That's why I told you the list of those values. Some people value money, power, relationship, social service, opportunity, leisure, travel, etc., etc. So values are definitely relative. What is valuable for one person may not be valuable for somebody else. So next one, third. Write down. They remain calm, composed. They remain calm, composed, positive, and unflappable. And unflappable even in very trying moments. Even in very trying moments. Now, there are some moments in our life which try our resilience. So, in such a difficult moment, I will give you some example of that shortly. In such a moment, the first important thing that is often compromised in us, that we lose our calmness and composure, we become negative and we become flappable. What is flappable? Flappable means that keep on changing course of your action when they do not. So, suppose you try to plan a course of action. Suppose it does not appear to work for some time, you change the course of action and start doing something else. Suppose that also does not work for some time, you start doing something else. Suppose that also does not appear to work for some time, you keep on changing your course of action. You keep on flapping like the page of a paper. That is called flappability, because for any course of action to work, give us a result, it needs a gestation period. So during that period, you have to keep patience, you have to control your impulse. But if you keep on changing, then you keep on doing everything, but nothing will work. So that is called flappable. So they remain unflappable, they stick to their course of action even if it may not appear to work for some time. That is the third important thing. I will give you some example of that shortly, but before that, write down the fourth one. Fourth one, they think clearly and remain focused. They think clearly and remain focused. They think clearly and remain focused even under strong pressure. They think clearly and remain focused even under strong pressure. Now, another important thing, whenever we are under strong pressure, for example, then another important thing that is lost in us is our ability to think clearly. Our thinking becomes unclear, vague, ambiguous, blurred. You have seen that earlier also, that emotions capture your working memory, which ultimately blurs your thinking. And it also captures our attention, focus, changes our focus. Remember, emotions have a strong focus catching capacity. So they often, you can say, change our focus to something else rather than something that we are doing then. So emotions often change our focus, our attention, our well, the centeredness on a work in a way. So that is so one sign of self-control is also that even under strong pressure they are able to think clearly and they remain focused on their present concern. Now, in order to understand all of these things, let us take some examples of these moments that I am talking about. What are those trying moments or moments of pressure? Let's take some example. I will give you some example. Try to think of more such example. They can ask you questions that discuss this with reference to certain examples. So these examples are important for us to sometimes remember. So let's talk about a certain case. Suppose for example, one example that I would like to talk about was given by Daniel Goleman in his book Working with Emotional Intelligence. Now, he has written in his book that there was a professor, you can say a colleague of Daniel Goleman. Once this person was going to deliver in Europe, for example, going to Europe to deliver a seminar, lecture in some international seminar. Now, this person when he was going to there, somehow he missed his flight. And the next connecting flight was quite delayed. So when he reached the venue of the seminar, then his time to deliver the lecture was already there. Normally when we go to some international seminar like that, then we have a resting time so that we can reach there for a after a long travel, take a rest for some time, and then we can see deliver our lecture. But this person was so late that, well, so late he was that he was not able to, you can say he did not have the time to rest. So his time to deliver the lecture was already there. So the organizers asked him that your time is up, people are waiting for you, please go there and deliver your lecture, then after you can take rest. Now this person went to deliver that lecture. Now before we proceed with the story, one more thing that I like to talk about, that as we have seen earlier, that high level of cortisol often creates stress in us. But cortisol is increased in our body not only because of the external factor, but even things like you can see the extreme fatigue, tiredness, or lack of sleep, or you can say extreme boredom, etc., etc. These things also increase the level of cortisol in our blood. So that's why we must have seen fatigue. When we are extremely fatigued and tired, then we are more likely to get irritated or angry. So people are, so in your family also must have seen your parents or can say somebody elders, well, father will be more angry at you in the evening than in the morning. In the morning we are fresh, always in control. In the evening we become more tired and we are more easily irritated. We are more likely to eat unhealthy food in the evening than in the morning. In the morning we are fresh, we can control our impulse. In the evening we are so tired that cortisol level is already high, a small trigger is there and we, well, give in to that and eat an unhealthy food. In the evening we can say the road rage cases happen more than in the, you can say, the morning. So the fatigue and tiredness often increase cortisol level in our body, that makes it easier for us to get disturbed by the emotional trigger. Lack of sleep, boredom, all these things often increase the level of cortisol in our blood. So this person that I am talking about, he was suffering from all these problems. That you can say the fatigue, of course, extreme tiredness, waiting for the flight and all, jet lag was there, lack of sleep was there, boredom, all these things he was suffering from. So cortisol level was already very high in his body. In that condition, he went to deliver that lecture. And he had planned that he will start his lecture by saying a joke. Normally people have different way of starting their lecture, that I will say a joke and on the basis of that joke I will try to make a point that I was planning to. So this is what he had thought. Now he started saying that joke. When half of the joke he had said and when the punchline of the joke was about to come, most important, punchline is the most important point of a joke. And the most important point of a joke was about to come, then suddenly this person forgot what that punchline was. Now imagine a situation that he has written in his memoir half of the joke he had said, and suddenly at the most crucial point of the joke, suddenly he forgot what it was. He tried all his best to recall, but he was not able to. Then after he thought in his mind, forget about the joke. I have not come here to say a joke. I have come here to deliver a lecture, a serious lecture. So where people are waiting for my point to be heard. Now, then after he said, okay, he will proceed with the lecture, he looked at the paper. All the paper was there on the podium, and all these papers were prepared by him only. But when you look at all these papers, none of them made any sense to him. His mind has gone blank. He was not able to make sense of any of the topic that was kept just in front of him there. Now, you can imagine the situation. He has written in his memoir that, well, 1000 eyes were staring at him. 500 people were there in that auditorium. 1000 eyes were staring at me. Half of the joke I had said, and I tried all my best, but I was not able to say anything more. He has gone completely blank in a way. This is what we call emotional hijack. His emotions have completely hijacked his brain. Now, then I will say that he showed some emotional intelligence. He thought in his mind that this is not going in, this lecture is not going anywhere. If I try to proceed further, then I will mess up everything. I will mess up everything. So, he thought that this lecture is not, he told people that I am extremely sorry that I am not going to proceed with the lecture. So, I have some problem, I will back after some time. Saying that, he left the room. He went to his restroom, took a long bath. Long bath is a very good stress buster normally. So, when you take, so cold water often drains out lots of cortisol from our body. So, he took a long bath, took a rest for half an hour or so, and then after came back again, and this time he remembered the joke also, punchline also, people laughed at it also, and lecture went on very well. But that was the point that I was talking about, trying moment, that how do you handle yourself. That is what we can see, this thing essentially age. Now, that is one example. Another example also I would like to talk about. This example, as far as I remember, I had read long ago when I was a small child, then I had read this story. And as far as I remember, it was related to Rabindranath Tagore, Gurudev, the poet. Now, the story is that, as far as I remember, I'm not very sure whether it was about him or somebody else. But as far as I remember, it was about him, Tagore. Now, the story is that once it so happened that it was middle of the night, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the night, Tagore was sitting in his study room and he was writing a poem. Then suddenly, middle of the night, 2 o'clock and all, suddenly somebody jumped out into his room through the window with a long knife in his hand and told Tagore that I have come here to kill you, be ready to die. He was a contract killer, somebody had given some, say, contract to kill him. Imagine a situation in the middle of the night, all dark everywhere, just a candle on your table, and suddenly you find a murderer behind in front of you, well, having a long knife in his hand to kill you. Now, in this situation, people perhaps will, well, lose their mind, but Tagore did not. He got up and he went to that person and looked straight into his eyes, and with a very calm face and voice, he told the murderer that, well, that killer, that if you want to kill me, you can kill me, but wait for 15 minutes. I am writing a poem, let me complete that. Saying that, without waiting for him to respond, Tagore came back and he sat on his table and continued writing the poem. After 15 minutes, his poem was complete. Then he got up and he spread his hand like this one and told the murderer that, please, now I am ready, please come and kill me. By this time, a transformation had happened in that person. He threw the knife on the ground and he fell on his feet and said that, how can somebody kill you? That I am standing here in the middle of the night, you can say, with a knife in his hand to kill you, and you are writing poem. People will forget their name also perhaps in such a situation. Now, just imagine a situation that in such, imagine you can say here that in such a situation that suddenly suppose you are in the middle of the night, somebody is standing in front of you with a knife in his hand to kill you. What will be your impulsive response in such a situation? Well, if you are a normal person, then your impulsive response might be that you start screaming, shouting, running, fighting. These are the normal response. Also imagine that had Tagore done any of them, scream, shout or run or fight, what would have happened? Well, he might have been killed. Now, that calmness that he showed, that peace that he showed, well, that composure that he showed, that positivity, that focus, that thinking, etc. that he showed, it ultimately saved his life. Self-control is that important sometimes. You must have heard the story of Buddha and the Ungli Mal. That Buddha, because of the calmness and composure on his face and all, he was able to convert such a big robber and deceit or murderer like Ungli Mal into a saint. So, self-control can be so powerful sometimes that, well, that calmness and composure that we are talking about can convert a murderer into also a well, a very good person. That is the powerful thing that self-control essentially has. So, all of these are the self-control definition part in a way. Now, next important question that we will have to talk about is, change the paragraph and then after write further. How to increase self-control? How to increase self-control? Now, first important thing that we have to do, a very important one, is write down further. Increase the self-awareness of the person. Increase the self-awareness of the person. Now, the way we have organized this whole concept is that the self-awareness and self-control we think we have conceptualized here as two separate things. So theoretically they are two different things, but practically the self-awareness and self-control is so important, so closely related to each other, that high self-awareness always, without fail, always leads to high self-control. So the moment self-awareness increases, it always leads to higher self-control in the person. So it always leads to high self-control in the person. So that is also found out. That's why I told you in the previous class I talked about research that in which some people were asked to maintain a diary of their emotional experience, and those people who maintained their diary, they got their second job in almost half of the time in comparison to those people who did not maintain their diary. So that is what we have seen in the now what happened. Now we can get the complete picture, that those people who maintained their diary, well, their self-awareness increased, and because of that their self-control also increased, and because of that they were able to perform much better in their interviews. Remember that in many of your interviews, self-control will be a very important factor that will make you successful or not so much. Think of it, many interviews it will happen. Suppose for example you are in an interview, UPSC. Now suppose the person asks you a very difficult question, sort of impossibly difficult question. You don't know the answer to that question. You simply say, sir, I don't know. Second question, very difficult. You don't know the answer. Third question, equally difficult. You don't know the answer. Fourth question, you don't know the answer. Fifth question, you don't know the answer. Now by this time you become panicky, that I'm not able to answer any question. Now under that nervousness and panic, they will ask you a normal question. And if you are you can say, so your answer to that normal question will ultimately determine how much marks you will get. They were not interested in those difficult questions. Those difficult questions may be possibly asked from you in order to create a pressure on you. Under that pressure, how do you handle the normal thing will be actually the major that they are interested in. So in interviews, often they will ask you more difficult question, more you can say like this one. They create a pressure on you, they create emotional turmoil in you, disturbance in you, and then they will see how is it that you are going to respond to that. So this is what we can see. So they perform much better in that case. Because of that, we see that self-control, self-awareness has become very, very important today. We often say that self-awareness is much more important today than it ever was in the history of humanity. Because earlier, self-awareness and self-control was our personal project. If I want to lead a good life, then I should be aware of myself. But today you can say that we have a serious competition in self-awareness. There are powerful people in this world who are trying to, very powerful people in the world who are trying to know us ourselves. And perhaps they know us better than we know ourselves. Who are these powerful people? Well, these big technological companies, the Amazon, the Facebook. Do you realize sometimes that Amazon and Facebook and Instagram knows you better than you know yourself? Very often, on your birthday, for example, well, Facebook starts giving you suggestion, or Amazon starts giving you suggestion that this is what you will perhaps prefer on your birthday. And you suddenly realize, okay, this is what I want. You don't know what you want, but they know what you may possibly want. So they are the ones who know you much better because they have huge data processing capacity and they have huge collection of data about every activity that you are engaging in. On the basis of that data that about you, they know you so well. That's why you can say self-awareness was never as important in the past as it is today. Because knowledge is power. If you are aware of yourself, you are in control. If they are aware of yourself, they will be in your control. They will be controlling you. You know, yeah, in the previous class I talked about that famous quotation of Socrates that an unexamined life is a worthless life. Now, this way I will change that definition, that quotation. I will say unexamined life is not a worthless life. An unexamined life is not your life. So, if you do not examine your life properly and know yourself well, then you will be actually, and you will end up living your life controlled by somebody else. You become slave. Today, we often become slave of these big technological companies. They know us better and well, they determine what life you are. They determine your shopping behavior. They determine your relationship. They determine your eating behavior. They determine your political behavior, political preference, everything. They have a strong, but they control us and we blindly follow what they are doing. We become slave in their hand. So today, in order to reclaim our life, it's very important for us to know who we are. Only through that we are in control of ourselves. If we don't know ourselves, our control will be lost. So first thing that we have to do is to be self-aware. How can you increase self-awareness? Again, two things we have talked about in morning class today. Increase, you can say, mindfulness practice, and second is the journaling. Mindfulness practice and journaling, diary writing, etc. So by doing that, we can actually increase our self-awareness, and through that, self-control will be increased. That is one thing that we can do. There are other things also that we can do. We'll talk about those other things in tomorrow's class. So tomorrow we'll talk about a few more ways of increasing the self-control of the person.